Bienvenidos. Comenzaremos con este
Welcome. We will now begin with this conversation of online Chinese cinema in 1 minute. This conversation will be given in Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, and English. You can select your language at the bottom of your screen. We have a world and a globe. May you all be welcome to this conversation of Chinese cinema, dialogue with Latin America. I am Roberto Lafontaine, Director of the Center for International Cooperation for the Teaching of Chinese Language, Center for Language Education and Cooperation, the Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean. Our institutions belongs to the Ministry of Education of China and is dedicated to the teaching of Chinese language among public, private, national governments, local governments, institutions of higher education, secondary and primary education entities, and also it promotes Chinese culture. So the activity today is dedicated to the seventh art, and the objective is to go in the Chinese cinematographic industry, exploring its diversity and evolution throughout the history, getting to know how Chinese cinema has been able to captivate international audiences with its distinctive style, captivating narratives, and intimate portraits of society and culture of this 1,000-year-old country. Previously, we have released two Chinese movies in our platforms, The Wandering Earth and Blind Massage, for a mega production of science fiction and an independent film that show the reality of a group of vulnerable people that require social care. Movies will be available until September 30th, and therefore we'd like to invite you to check them all of the information in our website that is being shared in the chat. In this conversation, we have the privilege of having the well-renowned Chinese lecturer from the University of Beijing, Dai Yinghua, who shared her vision on both these movies through her recorded classes that were published on a platform. Professor Dai will speak to us about the trends and the current trends in Chinese cinema, and she will be sharing her knowledge and experiences in this movies industry. We also have the honor of inviting and having with us Madame Gabriela Sandoval, founder of the Santiago Festival Internacional de Cine, SANFIC, and also a representative in Chile of the Ibero-American Federation of Movie Producers and Video Producers. We also have the actor Pablo Cerda, a screenplayer, producer who participated in the Chilean movie Fantastic Woman, awarded with the Oscar for the best movie of not English language, and also Professor Cecilia Melo, academic of the Department of Cinema, Radio and Television of the School of Communications and Arts of the University of São Paulo in Brazil. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us. We'd like to remind you that this seminar is being recorded, and as all of our events online will be published on our YouTube channel, Fundación CLEC. I will also tell you that this is done given that not everyone can see our seminars directly and that they usually see it after they've been published. Also, now we have a number of cinema schools that are broadcasting this to their students in their classroom, and this is going to become a live class. So now I would like to invite Madame Sun Mingyang, Chinese director of the CLEC Foundation, the regional office for Latin America and the Caribbean, who from Beijing will be presenting and introducing Professor Dai Xinhua. Please, Mingyang.
Thank you. Thank you, Roberto. Hello, everyone. All the students and teachers from Latin American, from online. It's great honor to be here online. So today's topic is about a Chinese film. Maybe some people mention the Chinese movie for the Latin American people, maybe a little not to know the Chinese film. Maybe they know about Jackie Chan, Gong Li, and Yimou Zhang. So it's not only about these filmmakers as a mark of Chinese movie. It's also about from the history about the Chinese film. In 2020, for CLEC, we invited Professor Dai Jinghua to record some film about China. They select 10 market films among the 20 years to explain the history and culture concept from the China. Now we hope from the Chinese movie for more people who like Chinese culture and Chinese movie can understand the modern China and the Asian China. So today, it's a great honor to invite Professor Dai Jinghua to come here to share the Chinese film for all the Latin American people. Dai Jinghua graduated from the Chinese Department of Beijing University, has taught the Film Literature Department of Beijing Film Academy for 11 years. Since 1993, has taught at the Institute of Comparative Literature and Comparative Culture of Peking University, director of Beijing University Film and Culture Research Center. Beijing University engaged in film, mass media, the gender studies. In 1993, to establish the first institute to research the Chinese films. She has given lectures and visited dozens of countries and regions, more than 10 monographs. I hope we can have more opportunity from online to offline. We can to the first line, the specialist of all the filmmakers, producers, all the actors to discuss and the combination from the Chinese film and the Latin American film. So let's welcome the Professor Dai Jinghua.
OK，请安德烈亚麻烦帮忙共享 PPT，谢谢。
感谢雨禾的朋友。Thank you for the CLEC, for all the friends from Latin America, from all the countries and all the regions, and all the jobs friends. I'm so honored to have this opportunity to share and communicate with all the friends and to share the China film. For me, I have many times the travels in Latin America. I think Latin America is also one of my hometown of the mentality. I adore the Latin American people, culture, the story, and all the film. So this tonight is very special, and I'm so excited and honor moment for me. I briefly to share the Chinese movie. For Chinese movie, from the birth is very early. In fact, the French produced the playing machines, film and film recording and playing machines were imported from Europe. started to record and play in China in 1900. They bought the playing machines, and the Chinese filmmakers started to make their own films. So in 1905, Chinese filmmakers started to make our own films. For Chinese movie, it's accepted from the European and the American countries. It's very late. In the 1980s to 1990s, for all the movies, if you know the Chinese movie, maybe you will know this name. For example, Zhang Yimou, Chen Kaige. In the history of the Chinese movie, they are the fifth generation filmmakers. Yeah, in 1980s to 1990s, they made the film about the Chinese culture and Chinese history, and from the European International Film Festival into spread to all the world, and from the world people will know the Chinese movie. At the turn of the century, in the 20th century, for the younger generations, the filmmakers, it's the sixth generations of Chinese filmmakers. They started made their low profit the film, and they focus on for some ordinary people, lay person, marginal world, and ordinary people, and focus on this. For example, the director of Jia Zhangke, at the turn of the century up to now, his name is becoming a Chinese film mark. Because of the film he made, people started to focus on the China's for all the things and the people's life in China, for young people's life and young people's concern and dream. And the sixth generation filmmakers now, up to now, it's still a very important representatives in Chinese filmmakers. For Chinese movie, another very important change and an important market moment in 2003 is at the beginning of the new century. Zhang Yimou made the film called Hero. It's the first the mega film in China. It's focused on in Asia and the international filmmakers, and it's up to a very high budget and high profit. And it's a history about the Chinese. The Chinese Asian custom for the Chinese film industry, it's marked a new Chinese cinema in internationalized and industrialized sense, and it's very lucky. We can call it lucky. It's released by the Hollywood, and from the Hollywood released to cover all the market around the world. It's formed for Chinese art films from the International Film Festival. This is the way from the European International Film Festival released from this film Hero. Chinese movie started to from this industrialized and strong release, and not only for the Chinese superstars, and included all the Asian superstars and filmmakers, and it started to the release of the commercial, and for the film markets, it formed a different China's different spreading. From 21st century, Chinese cinema started to form a unique miracle. From my perspective, except the European countries, even included some European countries, their economy, globalized economy, it's also decreased about the filmmaker from the development of the global economies, and the filmmakers will decrease. But for China, it's different. China's economy and China's movie are booming simultaneously. So China's economy developing is also at the same time to the booming of the Chinese film industrialization. China's film start to form the bigger and more influential industrializations film. So it's included mega city and small cities, and for all the budget, for all the products, and for the audience started to booming. For this part in China's film, for all the percent of the industrializations is increased greatly. Among the before the pandemic, China's film in the scale of the products and the budget scales, it's up to the second film country, just below from the Hollywood and over the Indian market. And it's the mark of industrialization. Maybe you all know of the films. For example, The Wandering Earth. For these fiction movies, after pandemic, now is the creation of the gods. And this ancient costume movie. And this is 3 series. It's called it's cost 30 billion budget. It's up to a new level for the Chinese filmmakers. It's a new record for Chinese filmmaking. With this, the background from the Chinese film in 2019, before the pandemic, Chinese filmmaking is up to the 1,000, more than 1,000 films. At 1,200 is the most. And among the pandemic, the film industry decreased to the 600 to 700. It's still over the 20th century. In 19th century, only 100 filmmakers in China. Under these scales of the filmmaking, China's movie start to try to the genre films. They started their own genre film. For me, one style is my favorite. We started and we make the unique ways for the Kung Fu with the reflection of culture and a new technology. For the Chinese movie, the most important filmmakers started to try use unique the language of the film to renew the Kung Fu films. For example, Wang Jiawei, the Grandmaster. For example, the Hou Xiaoxian assassin. For example, Zhang Yimou, the hero. At the same time, they start to try this genre film. Maybe it's the directed by the American filmmakers. For example, fictions, for example, the action movies, and use the big filmmaking skills to form a Chinese industry, the genre films, and to become the diversity of the Chinese film, and started to automatically to use this form to focus on the Chinese social issue and the expression of the Chinese culture, and to create the Chinese movies and the unique audio and vision. In this industrialization and genre films market, and with the big budget and with the development of the filmmakings, for me, I prefer the genre films, and it's the diverse and for the younger filmmakers to make the art film. In these art films, it's surrounded by a director to reflect the Chinese culture and Chinese issue, and to pursue the art of the film. It's the reborn and to regenerate the Chinese culture. It's the most prosperous, and I also very want to share these films with the foreign friends. In this art films making, just now I mentioned the 6 generations. It's also marked. For example, Jia Zhangke, Wang Xiaoshuai, the film is So Long My Son. For example, the 6 generations filmmakers for the most important director Lou Ye, and he made the creations of the films. He sustainably uses the reflections and the language of a film, and he spotlight for the little person, for the ordinary person, the state of their life, for the ordinary people, the love and the heat and their desires. And every time I will recommend a very low budget film. It's called The Piano in Factory. It's the first deputy film about a young director. It's used very low budget and use a very comedy style to express vividly, to tell the Chinese issue, the change of the Chinese society. With the change of the society and the change of the family, and the people face how to humorously and bravely to go through this history and defeat these obstacles. And recently, it's win the great fame and reputations, are very living in southwest of China. It's called the Bi Gan director. It's a Kylie Blues, and the Last Night in the Earth. And to illustrate, even for me, it's a very strange and very new. It's a new film world. In fact, in pandemic, with the influence of the pandemic for the Chinese filmmaking. For one day, there is one Chinese young filmmakers. They will take their camera to make their first film. In China, it appears many Chinese makers from this first debut to the third debut and to exhibit for the Chinese film festival, especially spotlight on the Chinese young directors. In this film festival, they can feel China's generations to generations, the young filmmakers for their design for the Chinese filmmakers, and they are very with the change and intensive changes in China, and they creatively to use their language and use their thinking to express their unique thinking. In this limited scale and limited time, I want to share a movie I prefer, the Six Generations director. I will share this director, his monographs, especially for this, the blind massage. And these monographs, it experiences the art films about the Chinese art film. And China's art films in Chinese filmmaking, in Chinese society, it plays a very unique, important, and strong roles. I want to share is Jia Zhangke. But it's similar to Jia Zhangke, use his to record at the turn of the century with the change of the Chinese society. He uses his monographs to form his own theme and market with the art creations style. It's Lou Ye. I also like in European International Film Festival, they presented about Lou Ye. They gave her a name, a spotlighter of the China's desire. It's also a very effective and accurate description. He used his eyes, used his camera to focus on the Chinese issue and to focus on the little person in China's great changes. They focus on their desires flowing. And he focused on the defeat of the desire and the floating of the desire and to search for the satisfaction. Just now I mentioned this China's spotlighter for the Chinese desire. In these posters, we can see the design style is decorative and it is splendid. In one side, it's very similar to China Lou Ye's film. It's the spotlight of the Lou Ye's family. Don't use the standing across the camera. He uses the high frame the camera to form innovative and splendid the film language and film expressions. From another perspective, Lou Ye's film is not very loyalty and splendid. It's not like these posters. It's very honest and he doesn't use the modern technology, the skills, the modern skills. He just uses the camera, use a very sympathetic ways to focus on the marginal and the little persons, to focus on and spotlight their sentiments and their emotions and their little desires, and for these little desires of result, and for this little desire, how to crush with the social issue. In Clegg, we cooperated to record the explanation of the Chinese film. I shared this blind message. This film, up to now, is the best film of the year from my perspective. Even in 20 years, is one of the best Chinese films. It's not only one of the best of Chinese films. It's not only to focus on the little person, the marginal person. From this film, it is full of the humanity, and for this society with the full changes for this nobody people to focus. Because of this film, it appears the strength and of the film. Because in this film, it's not only in the consensus, also in its value. We move our light and we focus on the marginal persons, and these are amount of the blind people. Because of the blind, they have no choice to choose a job. It's this job for the Chinese blind people. They just only have this choice. They don't have other choice. It's the blind massager. From this blind and from this job, it's not a very respectful service job. They are the marginal persons. But this meaning of this movie is not only to focus on these marginal persons. It's about to use the language of the film to present these people. The director give up to use the stereotype and the traditional style to present these people, and they use a new language of the film, and to present this person are blind to present their body language, and with the time, with the space, and the connection with the time, with the space, and with the ordinary people, with normal people's connection. So I prefer this. They don't use the exchange and transactions with the camera. They just use the movement of the camera to present the connections of all the blind people. I also very adore all the language film. They don't use only one or two actors to connect all the movies. On the contrary, they use every person's give the equal time to present their feelings and their languages. They use this style and use this ways to show the community of blind people. They choose how to use the audio and vision art to represent the community of blind people. And this film also become a reflection of the Chinese culture and Chinese film art. On the contrary, for the younger, low-budget films, they focus on and they use this camera for the ordinary peoples. It's on the other side, another Chinese film industry is to pursue high industrialized budget and input of the commerce and use the modern skills and modern technology and use the digital technology and to make the commercial films. I also, in the series about the Chinese film, I also shared the Wandering Earth. It's called the first science fiction masterpiece films. For kidding, yeah. For the Wandering Earth, it's the first year of the Chinese science fictions. It's for the skills of the industry and for all the modern technology and for all the products and for the storytelling. It's indeed to show the industrializations of the Chinese films. At the same time, this film is produced and released by the different countries from the commercial ways and brought the commercial Chinese movie to the market of the world. Before to talk about this movie, I will to share some things besides this movie. It's the first science fictions, but for the success of these films, it also have the preview. It's for an author of the science fictions of China. It's called Liu Cixin. And this author is also a legendary. He also lived in a very isolated, more remote mountain village. It's an engineer in a factory in the mountain village. In this isolated state, and for all the innovative fictions novels, he started to innovate. The most important and marked masterpiece is the 3 dimensions. For me, these 3 dimensions were translated more than 53 languages and in 13 countries. And she created the sale record in 13 countries. It's also a very unique and wonderful phenomenon. It's also become the preview about the Wandering Earth because the Wandering Earth is featured by the Liu Cixin novel. For in China and maybe in 3 dimensions, some countries, Liu Cixin is also a very important mark and famous advertisement in different countries. It appears many audience and all the people to focus on this film. For me, the success about the Wandering Earth, it's make me happy. The reason is about, in fact, this film, the skill of the filmmaking is not so high. For all the modern technology, for all the digital and industrialized process is about finished by the Chinese groups and for other commercial films is help under the help with the help of the group from European and from Hollywood. So it's totally different. I'm so glad to see in Wandering Earth this film. In the European Americans science fictions, it's a very different. When the sun is destroyed and the people decide to take the earth and to the trip to this commerce. In this century, 20 years, the Chinese people always talk about the Chinese culture and the Western culture. And the Western culture creates the ocean civilizations and the innovative civilization. And to compare with the Chinese culture, these two cultures, this conflicts and the difference from these two cultures, I'm surprised to find the director combined these two different characters. It's a commerce travel. It's also they drive the earth and takes all the people to the trip to the commerce. From some perspective, for China's audience, they reflect for the modernized concept. They also, for this Asian China culture, for the ancient Chinese civilizations rebirth, from generation to generation with the development and to create, to struggle for this. The Wandering Earth is a commerce travel. It's at the same time, it's also really for the destroyed film. Of course, it's very interesting. It's released in American cinemas. I mentioned the New York Times is the China joined the combat of the space. It's a very joking and humorous. It's apparently it's not only about this movie. It's also to the change of the world. It's a reform, a new echo of the world. From this perspective, for me, I want to form some low-budget films. It's not only for the commercial industry movies. Maybe for this low-budget art films and for the low-budget commercial films, it will give the more opportunity about the Chinese film to make us to think about in this changeable world for Chinese film, for Chinese culture, is there any possibility for our own culture? And all this possibility, can it spread to the world, give the different thinking and different reflection for the world people? And you can see the picture. It's the China's group, the modern technology vision. When I decide about this director, the first question is our group to finish all the digital vision. I'm also very glad and delighted. It's a It's a try of the independent originally. Okay. If you watched the first series of the Wanderers, you can mention and you can focus on some Chinese style storytelling. It's not a family about the American. It's about the China's mode style. It's 3 generations. It's also at the same time, it's a very unique plot. In ancient China, there are very mysterious and charming plots. In hard times, people how to solve and to raise other people's children. They don't have any blood connections, but it's over these connections. Okay. During the pandemic, the second chapter, The Wandering Earth, undoubtedly it appeared in skills, digital skills, industrializations. Is a film telling has a great promotions for The Wandering Earth second for these digital skills, for the imaginations. Indeed, it's up to a new level. When I watched this film, I'm a little bit suspect, a little bit confused. Also, I can say a little bit different because I put 2 posters in this PowerPoint. It's the main posters of this film. The first one, the left posters, you can see it looked like the Wandering Earth, the first chapter. It's not only one to save the people and save the earth, and it's focused on the community. It's also the part make me impressed. It's not the American heroes to save the world. It's not only one person, it's a community. And it's for a community, for all the people. In this left poster, it's a continue of the Wonder Earth first. It shows the second chapter. It tell a different plot and different story. It's about the skills and the technology and the machines. It's about people how to save their own lives. It's about human beings, how to remake and reset, and how to reset the new revolutions of the human beings. And what's the meaning of this changing for this world? This recently, it's a big question for me. And for this second chapter, give some answers, but I have others attitude for these answers from these movies, from these narrations of the film. For this film, this film can it be a new skills and a new present. And for this film, it becomes a new commercial skills and technologies to defeat persons, people's creations and prosperities. Is this the true or not? I'm thinking about it. It's also for all the Chinese filmmakings or Latin American makings, and for all the world filmmakers, they can give a very strong and not a lame answers. So, about the Chinese films, I briefly introduce and simply to share these presentations. I'm very looking forward to the communicating with all the filmmakers and with our communications with all the friends. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, profesora Tai, por su interesante presentación que nos amplía nuestras
Thank you so much, Professor Tai. This is a view that expands our perspective on the Chinese movie industry and how this has become a window from China to the world to get closer to the current society of the Southern Ural culture and country. As I said before, I would like to introduce our guests now from Latin America so we can begin the conversation. Gaby Sandoval, producer and cinema distributor, founder of the International Cinema Festival in Santiago, and director of Sanfic Industry, executive producer of Storyboard Media and Cinematriz, Chile representative of the Ibero-American Federation of Film Producers. In 2016, she was chosen as one of the 100 leading women in Chile. Pablo Cerda, actor, producer, director, and screenplayer, expert in Asian cinema with 20 years in the audiovisual Chile industry, has participated as an actor, screenplayer, screenwriter in several productions in Chile. Cecilia Melo from Brazil. She's an academic of the Department of Cinema, Radio, and Television of the School of Communication and Arts of University of São Paulo. She was a researcher in the Academy of Cinema in Beijing, University of Peking, and University of Taipei. Among others, she organized, among others, the books Realism and Audiovisual Media and Chinese Film. And she's also the author of Cinema of Jia Zhangke. I would like to ask Gabriela, what is your vision on this Chinese movie and the comments of Professor Tai Xinghua? Hello, thank you so much for the invitation. Well, this is very interesting what the professor is saying. I believe that, as you were saying, this analysis of these two movies, one that has this mega production. Thinking for Latin America, The Wandering Earth one was 50 million or something. That was the budget, which is something that in Latin America is way too many movies. And we have another movie. On the other hand, The Blind Massage. And what I find interesting is that these are two very completely different industries. One thinking of the commercial industry, the industry of connecting with a global public, and go from what we have done in this cinema for the Chinese cinema and the culture, thinking of something that's more global. This is a movie that was that raised more than $600 million and was shown in the States, New Zealand, etc. And the other one was a festival movie. It's a more intimate movie that has a look, means that the spectators are always being questioned, and we're getting into this unsuspected world where we talk about this collectiveness of characters as well. There's something that the professor was saying. These were like portraits of marginalized people within a social sector, but also what this movie does is to portray very intimately these characters, but with a lot of dignity as well. And while beyond what we don't see, they share this collective, and they can generate different sensations towards the spectators and discover different instances. So what I find interesting from what was commented and the example of these two movies that are two movies in terms of production that are very different, in terms of even audience are very different. But they're also thought for a global audience, not just local, because you can just go to the festivals and the other one goes to platforms and it connects to a greater audience. But they both look what the professor was saying, this new cinema or sixth generation of new Chinese filmmakers. Perfect. Thank you so much, Gabriela. Pablo, if you can comment. Yes, of course. Hello, everyone. Very kind. Greetings, everyone from Santiago, Chile. I would like to thank the words at the presentation of Ms. Lafontaine regarding my expertise in the Chinese cinema. I need to correct this and make this clarification because my approach to East, I'm a martial artist as well, and also a filmmaker. So for me, it is to have the opportunity of making West and East meet. And I found this invitation brilliant one. I find it really good because through the movies we can bring these two worlds together. We have always been together, but also separate. So taking the words of a professor, Professor Dainhua, who I would like to greet as well, and addressing these two movies that, as Capella was saying, these are big movies and small productions as well. But I believe that this need of, speaking of the Wandering Earth, the big blockbuster movie, the movie, from my perspective, taking the words of the professor, tries to show technology. And through this sense of community, where you can perceive the way of thinking of the Chinese people. I make this analysis, and I also believe that this need of technology and this search for technology and AI has a lot to do, from my perspective, with the new era we are living in, with this end of mythology as we understand it. And from this 2020, mythology is lost. It is already said that by Campbell and everyone who's understanding that the sky is not the sky anymore. The soil and hell no longer exists. Now we have planets beyond. We have a hollow earth for some and some deeper things. Horizons are expanding. So I want to thank, and I believe that is where the cinema is going, which I find fascinating. In the West, we are very much used to the cinema of technology and science fiction. I also find astounding that the richness of the Chinese people started with the search of science fiction in 2019. So that is something that interests me and invites me to look further. And also, something that I found that was fascinating, that in the West, we always protect and we always look for the main role person who saves the day. And in this movie, as the same as in the Blind Massage, the the main player is a group. So this is about this awareness of what the Chinese people can be today and always. So this collectiveness mixed with technology, I find it very interesting as a narrative poetic thing, and I take this as a point of reflection to make this exchange of words. So, and also I would like to thank the possibility of having seen Blind Massage, this representation of the sixth generation of filmmakers. I find this to be a brilliant work. I was very moved. I'm a filmmaker and I identify myself with these lower budget movies with higher quality as well. And I had to be honest. When I started watching the movie, I started seeing a movie about blind people. And me as a Western, an ignorant Westerner, I said, yeah, this is a movie for the same type of Westerners movies is with the Down syndrome people just trying to get quick tear. But the movie strikes me right across the face within the first 2 minutes because of the camera uh, choosing that the director had also trying to go back to the words of Professor Dai. So this trip of blind people, we start having this documentary story, and then we can talk about a question that is come to me. I don't know if this is a reenactment or a fiction documentary. I start wondering within the first 10 minutes, and then I focus. I just get immersed in the movie. After that, the trip of understanding that there's not just one main player, the magic here to try to exchange and play and invite you to the different worlds in a very astounding way. So within 10 minutes, you're in a different dynamic already. So we start understanding the depth of the movie. So the movie for me has a lot of meaning because I've never seen a movie that it was about love in such a deep way. An overexplored topic, but with this thing, I believe not everyone can talk about love after watching this movie. This love in solitude, there's a need of understanding the beauty. One of the main characters, this question of relating beauty with love, there's a very interesting question that these people ask themselves, what does beauty mean? That is something I want to discover. And I find that it's so loving, so kind, so sweet. There's this double reading of what this can be, and also understanding that this blind massage is based on the novel. If I remember correctly, it was based on a novel. This also invites me to think of dialogues, this need of the blind of seeing them, the non-blind as a foreigner, a semi-god who I respect, but I distance myself off. But that wandering in the dialogues, I would love to mention and bring up text that maybe it's in the literary work. There's a time between the two main characters where you understand that there are 15 main characters and they're all blind, and I never know if they're actors or not. And that is part of the magic of the movie. But you one ask the other, what is the difference between a person that comes towards you and a car that goes towards you? The other replies, one is a car and the other is a person. And the girl says, if the person that comes hits you, that's love. If the car that comes hits you, that's an accident. Cars always bump into each other, while people always dodge each other. So this solitude of the blind, where they feel different, the blind that are not allowed to be couples, the people with sight, do not allow them to express their love. With a scene in the end where they eat and sit down to eat, where the director already proposed the characters and you understand them all, and you have them on the table, and they're shown with this sensitivity. And in this coldness, the owner of the massage shop says, let's take a picture. Let's take a picture that we'll never see. A picture where we go to the real world in this absurd dynamic that we don't understand, but always belonging to a world. And then there's vomit and blood, and I'm not going to spoil it for you. But I believe that sensitivity, this sensitivity that surprises me, I know very little about Chinese cinema. As a Westerner and an ignorant, we know very little about it. The master talk about Tang Yimou and the other cinema of the 90s. And here we have a clear example of ignorance and Jackie Chan that belongs to Hong Kong as well, a very autonomous community. But for Westerners, I have to say, Jackie Chan is from there, but maybe not so much. There's an audience that we need to share. There's a cultural richness, a sensitivity that is worth getting together. And I'm very excited of integrating through the cinema, that is my language, to a new universe, to a magic universe, as I discover little by little. And that is what I could say. Thank you so much, Pablo. I think the specialist in the Chinese cinema must have been an enthusiasm of the person that drafted your bio. But without a doubt, what's important here is your experience in cinema. Very kind. Thank you. Thank you, Pablo. Cecilia, Cecilia, if you can have your comments regarding the talk of Professor Tai. Thank you so much. I'm going to speak slowly because I believe Portuguese is also translated into Chinese and Portuguese. So I'm going to be speaking with, I'm going to go slow, but I would like to comment and thank, I would like to begin by thanking this opportunity of being here today, speaking with the Chilean friends and mainly being here and with in the presence of Professor Da Xinhua, who's an icon for us in terms of Chinese studies. She's a reference, the biggest reference. And the professor really, I don't have any words to say. I can't even express how honored I am to be here sharing the screen with her. It was such a pleasure to share the comments here regarding Chinese cinema, going mainly going through the cinema of the 80s and 90s, the so-called fifth and sixth generations of the Chinese cinema, and coming now more recently to the cinema of the more commercial genre, sci-fi cinema that is ever expanding in China today. So I'm going to be talking about my experience now, and from there, I would like to try to portray the relationship with Latin America because I am from Brazil. I studied in the UK for very long, but when I came back to Brazil, I started making research projects on Chinese cinema with the funding here in Brazil, the students of São Paulo, on the director, and this project took me to China several times to study this type of director, and many times I was being asked for friends and Chinese colleagues in relationship to this very deep interest I had for China, for the cinema, and also for Chinese language and culture. And I believe that I could summarize this interest from some sort of combination, paradoxical combination of familiarity and feeling strange as well, which is something that exists between China and Latin America in a general way, especially Brazil. So therefore, if on the one side, I believe that there is a parallel between the large transformations and what is happening in China in the last few decades, and that it finds a parallel with the transformations, even at a lower scale, but that happened in Latin America, and more specifically in Brazil in the 60s and 70s, and until recently in terms of an urbanization, an accelerated urbanization, and a movement of the population all the farms from bigger cities and all of the transformations that are coming. In all of this accelerated urbanization is an industrialization into all of these that happens in Latin America and Brazil more specifically as well in the 70s and 60s. So I believe that there's a parallel between the two regions from that recent story and from that transformation, this accelerated transformation that brings to a number of questions in relationship to the importance of the memory of the past that is transformed very quickly in the space transformation of the geography of the cities and everything that seems to be new, and also the old and the new very quickly, and this brings a threat to memory that will be contained in the spaces of these cities that are quickly transformed. And cinema has the role of fulfilling in this process the role of bringing reflection upon these transformations and their impact on people, the common people, workers. And I believe that there's also this very strong parallel between these two regions. Cinema of the sixth generation of Chinese cinema, where we have, among other directors, we have a cinema that sees these transformations that comes to reflect on this that is happening in China. So we have a documentary by the Brazilian director that is very important that is called Walter Salles. And Walter Salles is what he did was that from this desire of showing some sort of admiration and love for the cinema of the director. This is a very beautiful documentary. It's a beautiful documentary. This is from 2014. So this is a documentary where the Brazilian director that goes to China and accompanies director Zhang He and visits the places in their movies in their province and the Chinese capital in Beijing. So I had the opportunity of being back in China. I had the chance of joining where the documentary is being filmed, which is a documentary which is like a love letter of a Brazilian director for a Chinese director. This is a very beautiful thing. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that it also has to do with my career as a researcher, because after a long time dedicated to the cinema of the director, looking outwards from Latin America towards China, this Chinese contemporary Chinese cinema was the one that led me to look towards Latin America from this affinity that I've been noticing in the contemporary Chinese cinema with magic realism in literature, in the Latin American literature. So then, a director given by Professor Tai Hua called Big Am, and Director Bigan, who did two movies, long feature movies that are very interesting, very creative, very different. One is called Talibu, and it was even in the presentation of Professor Tai, most of the movie, and the other one more recently called in English, Long Day's Journey. So it's in Portuguese was translated as The Long Trip Night In or something like that, which refers to the to Lee Jun O'Neill. But with the Chinese title refers to a story of Roberto Bolaño. So this is a movie by a Chinese director who assumes a reader of magic realism of Latin America and of other literary experiences in Latin America, such as Roberto Bolaños. So in the Chinese title, we get the last Sunsets on Earth, a story about Roberto Bolaño, and also from that is several influences for this movie, which are the last sunsets over the earth, and he quotes a Mexican writer, Juan Rulfo Pedro Páramo, who is a novel founder of magic realism in Latin America. So from this, which I'm mentioning now, I'm seeing for my continent in Latin America and for the literature in Latin America to understand the reason why this new Chinese cinema that also, apart from Pecan, we have other directors and other directors who are making movies that escape the realism of the sixth generation, but it is more focused on what's contemporary in the cities and admit a dimension of dreams, of magic, that comes to intervene and penetrate in the more concrete realisms of places and the use of the long plane and the sequence, etc. So I believe that we have a very special relationship between China and Latin America, and that is something that is present in the more creative cinema that is contemporary in China today from literature. So that is what I wanted to say at this moment. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much, Cecilia. Muito obrigado. So we don't extend ourselves too much, but we could stay very long here. It's 11:30 at night in Beijing. Professor Tai is staying up very late, and I would like that each one of the presenters, Gabriela, Pablo, and Cecilia, would ask a short question to Professor Tai, so she can also respond briefly, and we can thus have a conversation that is well-rounded. Gabriela, or maybe Cecilia, who's in line now.
Eu começo ou a Gabriela? Perdão.
Você começa.
Puxa, muito obrigada pela oportunidade.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Maybe if I could ask Professor Tai Jinghua, how do you see the place of the production of independent cinema in China today? China is becoming the greatest market of the cinema in the world with commercial film production, which is my strong suit, but also has directors that do art cinema and that somehow continue producing in China. But I would like to know, you see in this art cinema, a cinema that can be independent cinema, and what will be the future of this independent cinema to China today?
Can I answer now? Yeah. Okay. In fact, 2 weeks ago, I just come back from the first Young International Film Festival. I also at a recommender of a film chapter. It's included many young women director. Is the first debut. It can be seen the independent film. For me, it's very excited for me. For many women director, their first film is very unique and wild. expresses a young generation's film. It's beyond my imagination. I feel it's the energy of the Chinese film, and it's the hope of the Chinese film. You can see the many Chinese filmmakers. It's 20,000 yuan or 100 or 700,000 yuan. It's very difficult and it's very hard. And you can see what their love for the movies, and they use this little money to make this better film. Only have this the Chinese young filmmakers, and Chinese film must be prosperous in the future.
Muchas gracias, profesora Tai. Ahora sí, Gabriela, si puedes hacer una pregunta.
Thank you so much, Professor Tai. Professor Tai, now Gabriela, if you can also ask a question. All right, thank you so much. Yes. This is very relevant to China. This is also very relevant for everyone.
Es que creo que hiciste el canal, yo la escuchaba mientras hablaba, la traducción. Ok,
还是没有听到，没有听到
I
翻译。
don't hear the translation.
So, well, precisely with what we were saying about this new generation of women directors, and what we were saying generally, or what we presented was on male directors. And we have a trend in Latin America, for instance, the cinema that is directed by women is very powerful. Chile has had a number of awards in international festivals, and a great percentage is to movies directed by movies. And in that case, I just hang out to the answer that you were giving. So which Chinese directors do we need to keep an eye on that are upcoming, or that you can maybe recommend that we have an eye open for?
Okay. I have two perspectives. The first one, I feel in China and in the worldwide, for female in the film marketing is more spotlighted. In many occasions, the female represents the highest and supreme success. And for me, I say in the film industry is decreased. For the male filmmakers, they escaped other more field can make more money in many fields. At this time, the female will come into this field, then the female persists. In two perspectives, for the creation for the female filmmakers is highlighted, and for the future of the filmmakers belongs to the females. In China, more and more the women filmmakers. I joined the 3 times the film events. The 3 times film is created by the female director. It's a glad thing for me.
Thank you so much, Professor Tai. Pablo. Okay, thank you. I would like to also greet you, Professor Tai. An honor. I am so pleased to be able to be here with you, even though I'm far away. So I would like to refer, my questions are regarding this independent cinema. Independent cinema is young independent cinema, because we see the 6th generation. These are people from independent cinema, but also in the 40s. My question is, what are young people facing with the first movie? So what are the ways of being able to make this cinema? What is the funding of a small film, low budget? Understanding this is like independent cinema. We have government funds. These are private parties. How do we get these narrative freedom? How do we create new talents and a career starting from what is unknown? I am so sorry. I also would like to add, because we understand that in South America, especially in Chile, we're very used to create from nothing, from scratch. From nothing, we get projects. This is something that's very characteristic of the Chileans. South America in general. If we talk about France, we talk about a cinema that is completely structured, where you have the foundations that support you and fund you. If we talk about Spain, we talk about an industry that, in a way, because of the cultural part, it's maybe shied when starting movies because the dreams of the young people are very expensive. The dreams of the young are very expensive, so they are oppressed and boycotted. So that's why I asked the question. So how does the young Chinese talent have a dialogue in the industry?
For me, in China, in different the Chinese film events, for the young generations, for their debut, for their first movies, it's a high level for this first film. They use the language, the film language, and they use the integrity of the film. Make me, it's in, is it really your first film? And for this visual, the background and the development, it's totally different. From the childhood, they connected with the camera, telephone, and visual. It makes them even they started the level. They started the first level is for others mature directors level, and for other side for the young generations filmmakers, especially from the film festival to join the different the competition of the script and for some the trailers competitions and for the plans films competitions they get the input from the promotions. China now there are many film festivals, many young makers scripts they can get the first input. In China's film associations and direct associations, and for the Ministry of the Films, they have the plans to help the young generations directors, and the skill is grand. Of course, for the government, help also with the government requirements and expectations. It's not about the politics. It's also about other it's connected with the arts and aesthetics. And for all the project, it's open. It's very interesting. In this film festival, you can see the many young idea from an idea to a phrase, and for trailer, and for script. Ultimately, you can see the film of this first movie. You can, and for all the surroundings of the creations, it's better than other non-Western directors. They have more opportunities. And now, for the producing styles, make them recently. I'm so glad to see in China very small creative community. They love film. They make their own movies. They are directors, they are actors, they are editors, they are audios. In this friends circle community, they make their own movie. So I feel actually have different ways, different paths. They upset about when they make their movies, how to release it to the market. The release is very expensive. For the making, it's not so expensive. And to the cinema, to the theater, the release is very expensive. For this year, it's a great thing. China has a different mode of the playing. For the low budget movies, every day they are on the several theaters just for once. In other theaters, only for once. They don't use the commercial release mode. They have the opportunity to play their movie in the theaters. They can struggle for this commercial input for their next movie. This is my opinion for the Chinese young generation's director. Thank you so much for your feedback. I also learned a lot from the three narrators. I'm so glad to have these communications with you. I'm also so glad to see you in one day.
Well, as of now, Professor Dai, we kindly invite you to go to our countries, to visit our countries, and we hope we can have you in Latin America in the future, in person, as we did so many years ago before the pandemic. We did some tours of filmmakers from China that were in contact with Chilean filmmakers. It will be brilliant to have you as well here in Latin America, not only in Chile, but also Brazil and other Latin American countries. So I would like to say, so we don't expand ourselves too much, we have some questions from the audience, especially books that they suggest. But they were asking us what books on cinema we hope we can ask Professor Dai, and we will put that on our website. I would like to thank, without a doubt, to everyone for participating in this conversation, especially Professor Dai, who's staying up late in China, for her time, her dedication, her professionalism. I would also like to thank Gabriela, Cecilia, and Pablo for sharing their visions and perspectives on Chinese and Latin American cinema. We always have a lot of topics we would love to discuss at length after these activities. And we hope that in the future we can meet again in this platform. And we hope that you love this activity as well in the framework of our Chinese Plus Profession initiative. So in this case, it's Chinese Plus Cinema. Language is also learned through culture and professional knowledge as well. I would also like to remind you that the questions, the Blind Message and the Wandering Earth will be available in our platform until the 30th of September. And also the classes of Professor Tai on these and other 8 optional movies. And this seminar will be permanently available so we can see it in cinema schools and discussion groups as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening in Beijing, and good morning and good afternoon for everyone who is in Latin America. So thank you so much. 谢谢.
Thank you.